Welcome to What the World Needs Now with hosts Tom Whisinnand and Josh Monroe. We hope that you're able to leave feeling encouraged and ready for another day of changing lives in the field of education as we speak with inspirational teachers from across the nation and world about what keeps their spark lit.
In this episode, we talk with Miss Chyna, a special education teacher from North Dakota, about the importance of supporting both students and educators with complex emotions. She also breaks down the need for authentic relationships in education and bringing social emotional learning to the forefront of discussions. Without any further ado, Chyna Lynner.
All right, Miss Chyna, thank you so much for being with us tonight. For our listeners who don't have the privilege of knowing who you are, could you tell us a little bit about who are you, where you're from, and what's your role in education?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be on here. I love what you guys do, so I'm excited to be a part of this. I am currently a K-5 behavioral special education teacher. I'm located in North Dakota. I have kind of the awesome opportunity to get, I say, the best of all worlds. I run somewhat of a self-contained program in my classroom where I have kiddos who work in my classroom a majority of the day that are kind of working their way back into the classroom. And then I also get the chance to kind of work with kiddos that just come to see me when they need like a calm down break or they need some time from the classroom or just a separate setting to like chill out after a tough weekend or whatever has kind of happened. So I'm lucky because I get to work with kindergartners all the way up to 5th grade. I have a range of disability areas. If there's behaviors that need some problem solving, I get to kind of be that person. So I love my job. Like I said, I kind of have the best of all worlds.
You're all over the place. You got it all going on in your classroom.
Yeah. It's very, very fast paced. We have paraprofessionals in and out, kids in and out, but I like the high energy and like it's so different every single day. So you never really know what's going to come your way.
No, never.
I'm kind of curious about the challenges of, you might be working with a kindergartner 1 minute and then 15 minutes later you're working with a 5th grader. Because I've always known like working with kindergartners, that's a different world.
Yeah.
Now that I've got a kid in kindergarten, I'm kind of seeing the true ins to it. So I got to know, how is that transition? How do you go from that big of a age range?
Well, I think the surprising thing to me about like working and what I work in is that I have kindergarten to 5th grade. And the thing that surprised me the most when I kind of got started is that while there's such an age gap, there's a lot of similarities, So you'll have a kindergartner that might have those immaturities and the silliness that a 5th grader doesn't always have, but then they also have some of the wisdom that a 5th grader has. Same with 5th graders. They might be the cool kid now, and they kind of have a lot more going on for them in regards to just knowing what happens in the world, but they still have that like naivety and the silliness as well. So while there is a big gap between those, I think it kind of works as a family. So I would say one of the most beautiful things about my classroom, and I hope anybody that kind of steps in my classroom and gets to just kind of see how it's ran, is that it really has just a family feel as far as culture, So I have talks with my 4th, 5th, even 3rd graders about how they're the role models. They're like the big brothers, the big sisters. Those younger kids look up to them. And so it's really important for them that they're kind of leading by example, right? Yeah, everybody has tough days. People have meltdowns, and that's 100% okay. But what do you do when you have a meltdown to kind of turn it around? I also have little kindergartners that are sometimes kind of in that role model role as well. It's really neat to see everybody kind of work through their emotions throughout the day, despite their different ages. Like sometimes I'll have a 2nd grader kind of having a meltdown maybe, and then a kindergartner will come in and they'll be like, is he having a tough day? And I'll say, yeah, sometimes we have tough days, right? But that's just part of life, and he'll be able to turn it around. So it's nice that they can see kids that are in 2nd or 3rd or 4th or 5th grade, they still have tough days, just like I have tough days. And we learn how to work through them, right?
Absolutely. I love that you're normalizing not being okay, because it's not wrong to not feel okay. It's how you manage those emotions and the community that you're building around that is so powerful, so powerful. Man.
And I think as teachers, it's important to be that person, right? To model that. So like not only are kids modeling that throughout the day, but sometimes I'll come in and I'll be like, man, I've had a really tough morning today. So if I'm not as chipper as I normally am, can you be a little easier on me today? Because I had a rough morning. I spilled my coffee. I was late for work. My mom called me and she was mad at me. Just kind of relating it to what their world might be like, the chaos in the morning, and just being real with them. Because we're teachers aren't perfect, and that's okay to admit.
And it's fun when you have those conversations and they're like, whoa, you You have feelings like I do? You have moments and mornings like me?
Yeah, 100%. I love it.
Chyna, what made you choose education? And you're working with special ed behavior students. That's a calling. I mean, that is day in, day out. You're on. You have to be. So what
Yeah.
made you get into education in the first place?
Well, when I went to college, I actually went for like business management, I think was my first degree. And I remember sitting in an econ class and I was sitting there and I was thinking, man, like if this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, it is going to be a long and arduous life. Like I just wasn't very interested in it. But the thought of teaching just never crossed my mind. Yes, I like worked at the youth training center. I coached skating. I coached little kids in skating. So I did a lot of things with kids, but I just never thought about teaching because pay, and then, it's not always a job that people look at as like, wow, they're a teacher, even though really, if you see what happens in a day, that's kind of what it should be looked at as. But anyways, I had ended up just taking an intro to education class and I fell in love with it. And I actually was going to be a general ed teacher. If you would have asked me when I came out of student teaching what I wanted to do, I was like, I'm going to be a third grade teacher. That's the perfect age. This is what's for me. And I ended up substitute teaching, which I recommend to anybody that's like student teaching, first year teaching, anything like that. If you're just getting into teaching, it's 100% okay to take a year, half a year to substitute teach and see what it's like in different classrooms, right? To hop into like elementary classrooms and middle school classrooms and high school classrooms and going into music classes and gyms, getting to see all different classrooms, it gives you some empathy for like what you have to do in different areas as well, just as like a different perspective and gives you ideas for different behavioral management strategies and whatever else. So I had done this. I had subbed in a ton of classrooms and I ended up subbing in a behavioral classroom. And I remember being so nervous. I remember thinking, what's going to happen if a kid has a meltdown? What am I going to do if a kid has a behavior and they're throwing things or whatever else? And so I ended up subbing in this classroom and there was two kids that had a really tough day. They kind of got into a fight. And I got to sit down and just really talk with them. Like it was a very intimate moment where we just kind of got to brainstorm and talk through the problem. And I never had seen that side of teaching to that extent in other classrooms. And I thought, wow, this may be different than what I thought it was. That teacher ended being kind of out of the classroom some more throughout the year. And then they retired at the end of the year. My principal said, hey, is this a job you'd consider doing? And I said, you know what, let me think about it. I woke up the next morning and I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. So I took it on. I went and got some credentials so I could teach special ed and I wouldn't have it any other way. But yeah, talk about kind of getting thrown into it. I didn't know how to write an IEP. I hadn't sat through like the profile, the evaluation process or anything like that. So I was asking a ton of questions. I was rolling with the punches, but it was a really, really great experience. And now I wouldn't envision doing anything else. So.
Well, and it's awesome. It's that moment that you just sat and had a conversation and you were like, yeah, this is for me.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing is like in the classroom, you can have so many creative opportunities. You get to like really create these engaging lessons. You get to connect with so many other kids. But I feel so privileged that I get to some days spend like 3 hours with a kid or 2 hours with a kid. There is nothing more, I think, special than getting to see a kid when they have a really, really tough day. They're escalated, they're crying, they're frustrated. Maybe they say some really, really not nice things to you. But then when they come down and they want to make things right and they want to talk to you about how they're going to make it better, that is such a special moment where you really get to see how amazing kids are.
Absolutely.
And I wouldn't get to do that otherwise.
You get to do it every day.
Every day, all day. We had like 8 times today.
Oh, geez.
It's
you
a
get to be
busy
that
day
calm
today.
person. These kids have these huge emotions, right? And that's our role as educators to be that steady person. And Josh does that so well. And Chyna, I'm sure you do that just as well,
Yeah.
I find it funny just that you said that today was a rough day because my class had a rough day too. So Tom, I'm kind of curious, how did your day go today?
One of these things is not like the other. My kiddos were on today. They did great.
Well, I think a full moon is coming up in like the next few days, maybe. So maybe this is the start of it.
Yeah, probably.
That's what I heard, and so that's what I was wondering about because I'd heard from a couple other teachers that they kind of had rough days. So Tom lucked out there. Chyna, I'm curious, has there ever been a time in your career, because we can hear the passion in your voice, has there ever been a time though that inspiration started to dwindle? And if so, what did you do to relight that spark?
I wouldn't say I've had like a time where I'm just totally wiped out and I don't want to do teaching anymore. But the reality of being a special ed teacher with a lot of kids with high need behaviors who doesn't get prep a lot of the time and often doesn't get lunch, I don't have time to do paperwork a lot in the day. So I do a lot at night, and I'll be doing it, other times throughout the weekend or different things like that. And there are definitely times, multiple times throughout the year, where it is exhausting. And you wonder, why do I do this? Am I going to make it through? Whatever else. And I would say my biggest success in kind of turning it around is just remembering that your to-do list will never be done. And you have to prioritize what needs to get done. And sometimes things just have to wait. One thing that I've gotten really good at this last year is asking for extensions. If you need more time, that's normal. That's life. Ask for extensions because you'll get to it eventually. There's no point in totally wearing yourself down, not taking sick days, and just burning yourself out because you won't be what's best for kids. And I think always, and it sounds a little bit cliche, but the attitude that you have and your mindset for everything is what will kind of get you through it. And so making sure that you surround yourself with people that are really supportive, and people that aren't always going to talk about the negative things, but laugh and talk about the positive things too. My first year teaching, somebody had told me, if you're ever in a situation and it's so negative and you don't know how to get out of it, tell them you hear your phone ringing and that you have to go answer it, just to kind of remove yourself so you're not getting pulled down with the negativity, because there's a lot of negatives in education. There's not enough funding, and there's just a lot of things that go on and on. So you have to focus on the good if you're going to make it through.
You do. You have to stay positive. Focus on those positives. I love the, hey, my phone's vibrator, my phone's ringing. I got to get out of here. Help me. Let me out.
Did they just page me? I think they paged me to my room.
I think so. Another behavior's going on. Let me go get that.
One of the best pieces of advice I got when I was student teaching, because I was taking all this stuff home every night, and my cooperating teacher sat me down and goes, I just want you to know there's always tomorrow. And that really helped me to realize I don't need to take all of this home and work till 9 o'clock. And, some of that comes with time when you learn how to manage your time and learning the standards and stuff. But it's important to remember as we go through that there is always tomorrow. And you're 100% right. Our to-do list, it'll never be all the way down, no matter what we do.
Mm-hmm. No, I 100% agree. And sometimes, you know what, you didn't get your lesson planned or whatever else, grab an awesome social skills story and read it to your class and ask questions along the way. Play games, work on those social skills and those classroom community type things that take little to no prep, but are still fundamental for being successful in the school. So
we have a science curriculum that I absolutely love because it really does a great job of like embedding social emotional learning opportunities, a lot of pair reading, a lot of cooperative activities. And it really struck me today, like establishing the social emotional tone of your classroom really is like super fundamental to student success. It just, it's amazing. And it's not just okay, we're going to hit it hard for 2 weeks at the start of the school year, right? There's always time. You need to make that time for those social emotional connections like you were talking about. Whether it's just a quick game or whether it's, people writing facts about themselves that nobody else knows on a piece of paper and getting in a circle really quick and throwing them in the middle, and somebody grabs one that's, not theirs and they read it, and then they take turns guessing whose fact just got read. That's so important,
Because kids don't have the same opportunities as they did maybe like when we were younger, when phones weren't as big of a thing, or there wasn't video games that were just, quite so prevalent in life. A lot of kids now will hang out with their friends, right? So it'll be funny because I just had a kid the other day that said, oh, I was hanging out with this kid and this kid. And I said, oh, where did you guys go? And he said, no, on Roblox. Yeah. So, it's just everything is kind of shifted, which is okay. But then we have to make sure that we're providing opportunities for them to still get those same social skills that maybe we had just more naturally when we were kids,
Absolutely. I think technology is an absolutely wonderful and amazing thing, but it has taken its toll on some of those communication skills, on some of those empathy pieces, and reading nonverbal language that we still need to expose kids to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to have those conversations with kids about what nonverbal language looks like, because maybe it's just not so common to them because they haven't seen it as frequently, right?
Right. And I think as I have 2 children of my own, as parents, we need to be cognizant of what we're modeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can't be glued to our phone, whether even if it's work. I'm working, I'm responding to emails, and we have to really focus on modeling the behaviors that we want from our own children. Just like in teaching, it's all about modeling and being calm and providing them responses that are appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Chyna, you're bringing the hot fire energy tonight, and I love it.
Ready.
And so what are some things that you do to stay inspired? I know, talk a little bit about this really phenomenal, amazing mentorship program that you have set up, and what does that look like? What's it involve? Really cool stuff.
Yeah. So, especially for, I would say, special educators, there is, so if you are in an elementary school or middle school or high school, a lot of times there are other teachers that are either in your grade level, in your content area, or whatever. But there aren't so many special educators in a school to be able to provide the same amount of support as maybe general ed teachers or specialists or whatever have in their school. And so as a special education teacher, if you don't have a strong team, or you don't have somebody that you can ask questions to, it can be very isolating. It can be hard to jump into. And the thing is it's a really rewarding field. So we don't want people to feel so isolated and not see the good that there is, because they're burdened with all of these other tasks that they just don't know how to take on. And so with Teach It Special, and Teach It Special is just a special education geared professional development opportunity, we have created a mentorship program for first-year special education teachers. And we've definitely had some lenience with this because, with COVID, there have been a lot of changes. So we've had a lot of teachers ask if they can join who taught distance. They taught online for a whole year, or they taught for a whole year and a half, or they did a hybrid model, or whatever it might be. This year of teaching looks drastically different than it has for the last 2 years. And so we have so many amazing mentor teachers who are veteran teachers who are helping out our first year teachers. And then we also have a ton of mentee teachers, the new teachers that have signed up as well. And it's just been a really great opportunity for the new teachers and the veteran teachers to be paired. So each new teacher is paired with a mentor teacher. And then we have Zoom meetings or Google Meet meetings once a month where we get a chance to connect. We have an exclusive Facebook page to ask questions. We also have a Google Classroom. So there's just a lot of opportunity for collaboration and kind of feedback. And it was so fun because we actually just had our first Google Meet meeting, I want to say last weekend or the weekend before. And the energy that was there and the collaboration that was there on that Google Meet was insane. I had to say, oh, we're going to be done at this time, because the conversation was just rolling and rolling. And so we've now decided that we're going to theme each of our meetings. So we kind of have an overarching theme because there's just so many things to talk about. But yeah, it's going to be an awesome opportunity for collaboration. And I get so inspired because there's so many different ideas when you get a whole, over 100 teachers together brainstorming. So it's neat.
And Tom and I have talked about this in the past, though, and you said it can be isolating in teaching if you're not around people that you like being around, or if you're not putting yourself out there and maybe putting your pride to the side a little bit. We can be very alone. And so that's what I love so much, is that you're helping bring veteran teachers, new teachers, ideas into a room for everybody to learn and grow together.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful experience. And the other thing too is we kept it open not only for special education teachers, but general ed teachers who just want to learn more about special ed. One thing that I'm trying to be more intentional about this year, so if you guys have any ideas, throw them my way, is how to kind of bridge that special ed and general ed divide, because it exists. And I think it exists for a lot of reasons. But, when it comes down to it, I think everybody just has the same goal of wanting to support their students the best they can. And there's a lot of pressures as teachers and just kind of with everything going on. And so I'm trying to be more intentional on my social media and at my school with everything, just kind of trying to bridge that gap to make everybody feel like we're a team instead of it's one side against another side, because that's not, we will not survive or do well if we're working against each other instead of with.
Yeah, you talked about being connected with other people, and I think the power in gosh, I would love to just be a fly on the wall or another screen on the screen. That does not even make sense. Like a little square on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that would be amazing. Are there other books or like what activities do you particularly find inspiring?
So I have a lot of books that I really like. I'm so inspired by Ron Clark. I watch his movie every single year. When I'm working in my classroom before school starts, that's one movie I watch, and I always watch Freedom Writers and Dead Poets Society as well. Like those are my three that I always kind of go to because I just feel like they're so inspiring, especially in like the educational realm. I love Ron Clark's book. I love Kim Bearden, who's also the co-founder of Ron Clark Academy. Just looking up to people that are really trying to keep the energy high and the momentum going, and the positivity is kind of what I like to follow. There's also, I always suggest to anybody that's in the field of education, whether or not you post, create some sort of teacher social media account. I think it's a great idea because you can keep it separate. So you can have your personal life on one side, you can have your teacher accounts on another side, so you can keep it separate. You look at teacher stuff when you want, you look at personal life stuff when you want, but you get a chance to see a lot of people that are like you and I creating things as well. Sometimes I feel like when we read books or we look up to authors and speakers, it doesn't feel like maybe it's something that we can do because, it's at a different level. But when you're actually looking at your peers who are doing things on social media, it seems a little bit more attainable, right? So I'd say even getting on social media and kind of looking at what other people are posting is really, really helpful as well.
I got to know, have you ever gone to the Ron Clark Academy?
I haven't. That is my dream. I'm hoping in the next year or two I will get to, because wow, I can't tell you how many times I've watched videos there. Have you guys gone? I always look up videos of Ron Clark because it's amazing.
I've read a few of his books, but I've never had the privilege to go. And
yeah,
the way that everybody describes it, it is like a real life Hogwarts of magic. It's
But if you watch the videos and you see the energy in the kids and the teachers, it's unreal. It's so inspiring.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Chyna, I'm curious, and I feel like I know the direction that your answer is probably going to go, but in what ways do you invest in your students daily?
Yeah, I would say hands down, the biggest, most important thing is relationships, and just making sure that we are connecting and talking and just sharing things that are really important. Every day I'm about to put a post up on Instagram about all my favorite things to say to my kids in the morning. I think one of the most important things you can do when kids walk into the school is say, "Oh, I'm so happy you're here. Oh, I'm so glad you're the first one to see me this morning. Oh, I love when you get here early and you can hang out in my classroom before school starts." I just think making sure kids know how important they are to you and how much you care about them has so much power in how they're going to do throughout the day. It's amazing how when you build that relationship and you take time to invest in, learning about what they like, learning about what they did on the weekend, learning about the things that are really tough for them at home, how powerful that can be when you need to help them kind of problem solve those tougher situations as well. I think it's so funny too, because what my kids always say, "Miss Chyna, you never yell, you never yell." But so I had a situation the other day where one of my kiddos had said something he definitely should not have said. And so I ended up I had to go get him to talk to him, and he wouldn't listen to the para that he was supposed to walk down with. So I went down there and I said, "You're going to come with me." He came with me right away. Looked at, he said, "I'm sorry. I know what I did. I'm sorry." And he talked about it with me, and we were able to get back to class. But it's just crazy how, without yelling, without having to be, I feel like we always think of teachers having to be like the Viola Swamp or the teachers that yell to kind of get any sort of like classroom management, but just being kind and building those relationships can go a long way when you need to kind of problem solve and help kids, see what they did wrong.
I love the Viola Swamp reference. That just
I know.
made my whole night. Just
right?
So you know, that book is a must read if you don't know who Viola Swamp is. Look it up.
Yeah. But I feel like that, you think of that as a kid, you were like, man, the only kids that, the only teacher kids will listen to are the ones like Viola Swamp. So it's cool now being a teacher realizing that you don't have to be that way to get the same sort of outcome from your kids. You can still have respect. You can still have really great conversations, and you don't have to yell or be unkind or anything like that. You don't have to have crazy expectations or crazy consequences. Just being real and letting kids kind of share their input goes a really, really long way, as long as they know you care about them.
I think they know who the safe adults are, and they know the adults that will like pick up that power struggle rope. You're coming with me. No, I'm not. You're coming with me. No, you're not. And sometimes just the tone of your voice or the relationship that you've established is enough for them to say, yes, I will go with you. They're not going to argue with me. That's the direction, and I need to follow it. So
I found it so interesting. I put up a post on Instagram the other day that said something about how you'll never win a power struggle, right? So if you're in a power struggle, if you argue and argue and argue, you'll never win. And I was surprised by how many teachers actually want to win a power struggle. Because sometimes I'll catch myself, you're talking with a kid and all of a sudden you realize, oh, I'm going down that road. And you just kind of have to back off, because when a kid's escalated, you're never going to really get that same outcome. You don't have a rational mindset. So arguing for the sake of arguing isn't going to win, nor do you have to prove anything else to your students. It doesn't matter if you quote unquote win an argument in front of the students' peers. Kids understand what's going on, and it's okay to just kind of back up and say, hey, I'll talk to you in about 5 minutes. I'm going to give you a few minutes. Totally okay.
Oh yeah.
And do you ever win an argument if it's with a child, but two, especially if it's in front of all of their peers? Like, even if you win, you've just humiliated that kid to a point where that relationship's going to be broken until we sit and work with it a lot harder. So yeah, that's interesting though, that you had a lot of pushback on that. Like, yeah,
it's interesting, the perspective. Sometimes I think it's hard, to realize that it's not always about you. The argument is occurring and it's not about you as the teacher. There's a lot of other things going on that are contributing to why that kid's arguing. Maybe they didn't have food at home. Maybe they didn't get to sleep last night. Maybe a family member died. Maybe they have a lot of chaos going on in the home and they're not coping with it in that same way. Or maybe they've never seen a kind and respectful conversation when somebody disagrees. And so making sure that you're the one that's guiding that in a positive way and showing them how it's okay to step back when both parties aren't really ready for the conversation is important too.
And I think you do a great job on your social media too about talking about choice language with students, because that can go a long way with the way that we word things to students, and not saying, hey, you need to get started, but hey, do you want to put your name on the paper, or would you like to start at number 3? And giving them that choice and that control can really de-escalate a lot of situations too.
Yeah. Yep. 100%. And, I think part of it too is, as teachers, we're kind of type A a lot of the time, right? So we also like having control. So I think realizing that choice language allows teachers to still guide the learning and still have control, but they're also giving that some control to the student, can be a little bit more beneficial as well.
You're absolutely right. Chyna, you've been in education for a while and you've done all kinds of things, it sounds like, and are an amazing special ed teacher. Taking the special ed part out of it, what are some of the biggest rocks, biggest problems, issues facing educators today, do you think?
I would say, always, what they say is lack of funding. I would say what we're noticing now, probably more than ever with COVID and social media and so much going on in the world, is there isn't enough mental health support for kids that really, really need it, especially in our schools. Kids sometimes will have really, really tough days and make comments that they should be seeing mental health professionals, and we don't have anything. So what do? They send them back to school. And then at school, we also don't have those supports. So a lot of times it goes to the special ed teachers and the counselors and the school social workers that are working to kind of help these kids survive throughout the day. So I think hands down, one of the toughest parts of education is just not having the funding to provide the mental health support that kiddos need. And that's not only an education thing, that's a worldwide issue. If mental health was recognized and supported with appropriate funding, I think we'd be in a lot better places in a lot of regards.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions on maybe what we could do, the ways that we could advocate for things like that to happen? Because I've noticed the same problems that you're talking about, and it's hard when, as teachers, we sit there and we love these kids, but we know that they need some extra help. They need more than what we can give them, and we can't get it for them. So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about ways that we can change that.
I would say just definitely educating yourself on the effects that mental health has on kiddos, especially in regards to trauma and things like that. One of my favorite books is Fostering Resilient Learners. It's a fantastic book with a lot of different statistics and data in it that kind of backs up why mental health support and understanding trauma is so important. I think schools can do better with just making sure that educators are given the professional development opportunities that they need to understand trauma and to understand that mental health is just as much of a concern as other health related issues. So we have to look at mental health as something that, even like somebody who maybe had a disease or whatever and needed treatment for as well. Both parties need to be equally supported. There's that image that kind of shows disabilities, right? And what they look like. And there's like a wheelchair and somebody with a cane. And then they have a picture of a person that looks normal, because a lot of people will look normal and they will still have needs that need to be recognized and helped. I think the other thing that's really important is just sharing how much we have to do as teachers to help support these kids, right? I don't think the general population always knows the types of conversations that we have to help our kiddos. And I think it's really, really important to make sure that people are aware that we're helping these kids in a lot of capacities, where we should also have therapists and other mental health professionals in our schools being able to help out. It's a really, really high need area. And so we know I kind of go on that line where, do you continue to support kids, or do you request the help? Do you show that they need more help and not help them as much so we can get more support in our schools? Or do you continue to absorb it to help our kids? It's kind of a catch-22. I don't really know what the answer is. I post about that a lot on Instagram. Do you continue to buy papers and everything you need for your classroom because it's not provided, but kids need it? Or do you not buy it so eventually schools will start providing what we need? I don't know. It's hard. I personally am weak, so I think I will continue to provide for my kids in any capacity that is involved in. So I think just making sure to share that mental health is here, and there are a lot of concerns in our schools just with everything going on in our society. And then I would say, if you're in a school and you're looking for more support, social workers always have awesome ideas for like local nonprofits and, community connections that you can find. And it's also okay as an educator to reach out to those nonprofits and say, hey, would you be interested in partnering with this school district? We'd love to have you. We have a lot of kids that need it. We just started getting, I know you always bring Nala into your classroom, but we just started getting service dogs that come in, every week. And then we kind of get to schedule times for our kids, which is really, really beneficial. And we wouldn't be able to do that if we weren't reaching out to like people in our community. So I think there's a lot of people that want to help. So we just have to ask. The worst thing that somebody will say is no. So why not ask?
That's a great way to look at it. Like the worst they can do is say no, and then you move on.
That's how I live my life.
I love that.
You'll never know. If you never ask, you will never know. So you might as well ask.
I think we have to keep working too, and you're pretty much saying this, but to work to take away the stigma that mental health has on it. Because you're right, a lot of people don't look at it the same as they look at other disabilities that are visual, that we can't see. And I think a lot of times we hide away from talking about those. Even in education sometimes, because we don't always know the best way to help. And I think if we can break down those walls, we can have those conversations, we can take away those stigmas, and we can start being there better for those kids that have gone through trauma. And
I feel like even maybe in like educational programs when teachers are going to become teachers, in those programs, if we focused more on like the whole picture, what it's going to look like in education, because so often we focus on academics, this is how academics are going to look. It's going to be standard based, reporting, all different things like that. But we don't talk about how academics and behaviors and social emotional learning are going to be just as important. If you don't have one, you don't have the other. So you need both to be able to be a successful student within the classroom. And so I think just focusing on both of those ideas would be really, really beneficial for people. It was interesting because just a couple of years ago at our school, we were talking about student of the month, and student of the month had always been one of those things that was, if you were being successful in academics and you've been working hard and whatever. And I had asked the question, well, what about one of my little buddies who maybe always works really hard at academics and is never going to be a super high flyer, but wholly went from the lowest level on his leveling system all the way up to the highest level in a month? Like maybe that should be rewarded. Yes, it's a different plan than all of his other peers, but his peers also recognize that he's made really big gains. So we should be celebrating that as a school. Even though that student might have behaviors, it's important to recognize that all students are making growth and it's not going to look the same.
We're not all cookie cutters. I love that.
Not at all.
We have to take the individualization of being human into account at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for some administrators who are hung up on test scores that are published, that can be really tough to admit, academics aren't the end all be all in education. That's tough.
We're going to start using a new program this year. I'm trying to think what it's called. I think it's called Panorama, maybe. Have you heard of it?
Mm-mm.
And it's essentially, it tracks attendance. It tracks academic interventions and progress. It tracks social emotional levels and mental health and behaviors, which I think is a really neat idea because it takes all of this data and it collects it together for one child. And it's trying to focus more on looking at the entire child, so if school isn't always successful, it's not just because they're lower in academics, but maybe attendance or social emotional learning or behaviors are playing into that. So I think that's a really neat idea too.
That's really cool.
And you said that's called Panorama?
Panorama. Yep. And it's a website. So it's how we'll track all of our data, like our attendance, everything. So our district just now is adopting it like this year, and we're just going to start kind of rolling it out here, as we start getting things figured out. We just had a training on it last week and I was so excited about it. I normally, when you sit in a PD for a district-wide, informational meeting, it's not always the most exciting thing, but we were looking at this and the data that it's going to collect and the way that you can actually look at the whole child. You'll pull up a student and it will show data in every area.
That's really
and all of those things contribute to a child's success in education. If you have low, social emotional or really, really high social emotional needs, you're probably going to see some wavy parts in academics. And so it's interesting that it takes all of those things into account.
That's really cool. I like that.
Yeah, that's new. You'll have to look into it. I'm sure it's not cheap, but
yeah, I imagine
I'm excited that we have it. So
I've loved this, Josh. This has been so much fun.
I agree.
I agree so much. This is amazing.
We talk about after every episode. We're tired. It's late. You're the same time zone as us though, right? It's about 9:15.
9:10. Yeah.
You're worn out after going back on a Monday, but after having these conversations, I get pumped for the rest of the week. I get pumped being able to learn, listen, and grow. So thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love doing things like this because, like I said earlier, getting the chance to connect with others and then just kind of talk about what you're seeing in your schools and what we see here, it fires you up and gets you excited. Honestly, I'll probably stay up until like 1:00 because I'll be so wired after this. I get so excited about things. I'm like ready to go. Maybe I'll go back to school and start working.
Don't get too excited. We have one last brain buster question for you.
Ooh, okay.
Okay. So at the end of every episode, we always ask, what does the world need now? Right? In the 60s, it was love. There was mountains, there was rivers to cross, mountains to climb. What does the world need now, Chyna?
I would say the world needs to have empathy and understanding that no matter where you come from, no matter what your beliefs are, no matter what you're going through, that we all are human and it's okay to have differences of opinions. It's okay to be different, but we have to kind of empathize with each other. Nobody knows what anybody else goes through. And it's really, really important to recognize, because nobody feels emotions or anything the same way. And so just having empathy and being there for people and loving people and being kind, I think is what everybody needs. And that goes along in jobs. It goes along with, you know, the political state that's going on, where there's a lot of divides with political parties and different beliefs and whatever else. I just think everybody needs to realize that beliefs kind of make you who you are, and you have to have empathy and understanding for each other's differences, because it's okay to be different. We just have to realize that, you know, it just contributes to who we are.
I love that answer, because listening to you talk and the way that you invest in your kids, the way that you prioritize relationships, it fits everything that you're saying. Modeling bad days for your kids, you're modeling what you want to see in the world, and I think that that's a really special thing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's important. We need more empathy and love in this world. Life's too short to be negative and, you know, upset with other people.
Chyna, thank you again for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's been fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. Thanks for tuning in this week. We're so thankful and appreciative that you took your time to listen to our guest, Chyna Lynner. Hopefully you're ready for another week of changing lives, and hopefully what the world needs now is helping you to sustain your inspiration as you enter a new year. If it is, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps us continue to get inspirational educator stories out.
We hope that as you head out, you remember that the biggest factor that plays into student success is you. Your love, your passion, your empathy, your dedication. It's exactly what the world needs now. Thank you for all you do. Have a good one.